Hello, everybody, and welcome into a new edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Podcast Network and on Patriots Press Pass. I'm Evan Lazar, as always, joined by Alex Barth of 98.5 and Atlas in the background. He wants Odell Beckham Jr. on the Patriots. Alex has been tracking airplanes, helicopters, letting me know where Norwood Airport's entire flight log has been for the last couple of hours. Of course, Odell Beckham Jr. now officially a free agent. He has cleared waivers. Nobody claimed Beckham on the waiver order, so he is a free agent. Can choose whatever team he wants to go to, Alex. And I reported about an hour ago or so that I've heard three teams that have been connected to Odell the most. That is the Packers, the Saints, and the Patriots. Now, a couple of people have also touched on the Seahawks as potential suitors for Odell Beckham Jr. I haven't necessarily heard that. Some dark horse Raiders conversations, but those seem like the five teams, if you want to expand on my report, that are really in the mix here for Odell.
Yeah, I mean, that's all logical, right? That I don't. Do the Saints even? I know he can make the veteran minimum, but do the Saints even have that money? I'm not entirely sure what their cap situation is.
Yeah, their cap situation is tight. They don't have a quarterback, but I was told that the two most important things to Odell are playoff contention and offensive innovation and coaching, right? And I think a lot of people, when they hear good coaching, when I tweeted out good coaching, they responded, oh, the Packers don't have a good coach. You know, LaFleur kicks field goals in the NFC Championship
Well,
game.
LaFleur does suck.
Okay, but LaFleur sucks from the standpoint of game management, situational decision making, things like that. When I say good coaching, I mean a guy that's a bright offensive mind that's going to use the player to the best of his ability, not anything to do with did he kick a field goal, down 3 or whatever it was in the NFC Championship game.
He wants a coach that's going to get him the ball.
Correct.
That's what it comes down to. And with Aaron Rodgers there, the way they run that offense, he's going to get the ball in Green Bay. I totally buy Green Bay. I said this, remember, in the summer when we were talking about potential landing spots for Stephon Gilmore in a trade. If you're the Packers, you don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers next year. I mean, this might be the last year of your window. This might be it. You need to go all out. You need to think about the short term. So if I'm the Packers, I'm all in on Odell Beckham. That is the guy. We'll see if it works out that way. I think Seattle makes a ton of sense too, especially now that Russell Wilson's coming back. To me, it's those two and the Patriots are the three contenders. So that's where I'm at with it. I love to see him come to New England. I think the Patriots would be interested from everything I've heard and just, some personal educated guesses, connecting the dots. Like I say this all the time. When you do anything, as long as Bill Belichick's been the head coach of the Patriots, as unpredictable as we like to think he is, patterns are going to develop. And they, not every time, but they have made this move in the past, comparable moves in the past when they're there. Whether or not they worked out, it varies. Whether it was Antonio Brown, obviously, in 2019. I would call trading for Aqib Talib a comparable move to this one. It's not a perfect comparison, but it's in the ballpark. So again, they've made this move in the past, and I think they would make it again. It's just a matter of, does Beckham want to come to New England? Does he see New England as the best situation? Maybe. I think there's certainly a case to be made for it. We don't know enough about what he's thinking to definitively say yes or no. I think playing for Bill and playing for Josh McDaniels is certainly an opportunity, right? If he wants to get his value up to hit offseason in the spring and max out on a contract, I think playing in New England would help him do that. I think Mac Jones is a quarterback that with his accuracy that is going to maximize Beckham's best skill sets. Now, is he going to do that more so than Aaron Rodgers? It would be really hard to say that, but he's not a bad quarterback for Beckham to play with. I think in some regards, he's an upgrade over Baker Mayfield. When you talk specifically about how his play style relates to Beckham's play style, I think he might be an upgrade over Baker Mayfield in that sense. So there's an argument to be made there. I don't think the Patriots are out of it, but I also don't know enough about what Beckham truly wants. We know the reports, but what's truly in his head? I don't want to out your source, Evan, and no offense, but I highly doubt you're directly texting Odell Beckham. You're right. I don't, because
Understood.
if you were, I think we would know by now if he was coming to the Patriots or not.
Yeah,
But I'm just joking around. But
I
anyway,
know.
I think there's a case to be made. There's a strong
Yeah.
case to be made. We should. This isn't something where it's a fantasy and I'm saying, you need to let it go. No, this is worth keeping our eyes on. This feels real.
Yeah. So I went back and watched some of Odell's tape from this year just in case, right? I always prep
Right.
just in case the move happens. I'm not saying that I am so sure it's going to happen that I went back and watched his tape, but I think there's at least a little bit of a chance. So I went back and watched it today. And look, he's not prime early career Giants Odell Beckham Jr. that was an explosive 80 yards to the house on every single play. He's not quite that player, but he's still really, really good. And the one thing that I definitely saw on his Cleveland tape is why he grew frustrated with Baker Mayfield and his inability to get him the football, especially I think the beginning of the end for the Baker Mayfield OBJ relationship was the game against Minnesota in week 4 of this season. Beckham was open on the tape all game long for 4 quarters. And there were a couple of instances on downfield throws where Baker just couldn't get him the ball, or the ball was off target and incomplete. There was a couple of times where Baker didn't throw him the football and held the ball and it didn't go his direction. But Odell could have had 100+ yards and a couple of touchdowns in that game quite easily, and just didn't get the football. And it felt like there were a couple of instances in other games where he didn't have those opportunities and he wasn't getting the ball where he needed it. Now, Max seems like the type of guy that when you watch some of the ways that they use the receivers, not necessarily here in New England, although I think Odell fits what they do in New England really, really well.
I mean,
But
he fits anything. He's that good.
right. Going back to Alabama, though, for a second, and just thinking of how they used Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith in that offense, and some of the, the skinny posts and the slant routes and the over the middle type of things and the one-on-ones on the outside, and the way that Beckham can go ahead and win both inside and outside, it does feel like on top of that, maybe he does have another gear after the catch that he just wasn't able to really show off in Cleveland because of the way that they were using him. If Mac hits him in stride on a quick 3 or 5 step slant or something like that over the middle, and he's got the angle on the deep safety, I mean, those are the types of plays that Odell used to make, right? He used to run right by everybody on those types of throws. And Mac is the type of quarterback that can lead him in stride and put it right on the numbers and allow him to run with the football after the catch. So from everybody, Tom Curran's reported on this today, Mike Giardi's reported on this today, that there are people in the building in Foxborough that believe that Odell might not be prime peak Odell, not a superhero anymore, but he's still really, really good, and he'd be a fantastic fit in what Josh McDaniels runs and give the Patriots something that they don't necessarily have, and that is somebody that is a true game breaker, a number one, we got to put our number one guy on this guy, or we got to double this guy. And I think the most telling thing, going back to this Panthers game a little bit, when Stephon Gilmore came on the field, the Panthers put him on Jacoby Myers. And it's no offense to Jacoby Myers, but if the guy that the other teams are identifying as your number one receiver is a player on Jacoby Myers' level, then that I think is a very telling indication of where your wide receiving core is relative to the rest of the league and how the league views you from a wide receiver perspective. So that's also another reason why I think if the Patriots do go out and get Odell, they will use him a lot more in the slot than maybe what he's been used. He's been used a little bit inside, like 20% of the time. I think that slot number will increase quite a bit because the Patriots offense runs through that Z receiver, right? That Edelman role, that now Myers role. And although a lot of people I think are going to anticipate him playing a ton on the outside, I think that he's actually going to play a lot inside if he signs with the Patriots. And I think he'll like that.
I just think, to backtrack a little bit, you really hit it on the head. And, when I said in some ways Mac Jones is a better fit for him than Baker, when you're talking about the run after catch ability, I always thought that was the most underrated part of his game. And it was almost criminally underrated where he obviously made the catch against the Cowboys. And that was his probably still is his defining moment. But, people talked about him as this deep threat, spectacular catch wide receiver. And it's not to say he can't do that. He absolutely can. But what always, when we talk about elite Odell, New York Giants Odell, what really made him elite was the run after the catch ability. It was, yeah, he could go up and fight for the ball and win 50-50 balls and the catch and all that. But there weren't really any other receivers in the league who could make those catches and could make plays with the ball in their hands the way Odell could. And
he was a punt returner, right? I mean, he was literally
he was like an elite punt returner.
Yeah.
So the way to maximize a yards after the catch receiver is an accurate quarterback, a pinpoint quarterback who can put him in stride, lead him away from defenders, things like that. And if there's one thing about Mac, what have we praised about Mac since before the draft? His accuracy.
Right.
So he is, again, when you look at it in that bubble, yeah, he's a fit. Odell's a fit for the Patriots. Now, how does that compare to Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay? I'm not going to sit here and tell you Mac's a better quarterback to play with than Aaron Rodgers. I'd be lying. Right. But it at least puts them in the ballpark. It at least puts them in the conversation. So we'll see. We'll keep watching helicopters and small planes, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I think your point about how Odell has never, obviously he's got that explosive ability to go deep and take the top off if you want to use him in that vein. But just reading off now his average depth of target with the Giants from like 14 to 16 here, 17, it was 12.3, 12.1, 11.4, 13.0, 12.5. So right now, the leader in the NFL in average yards per target, or ADOT, if you will, is Emmanuel Sanders at almost 19 yards per target in the air. So that's average. Odell being at around 12 is around league average in terms of ADOT. So this was a guy that took short slants, drag routes, underneath crossers, in cuts, all crossing routes over the intermediate part of the field, screens, and made explosive plays all over the place. That was peak Odell. Is he that guy anymore after the catch? The statistics say no, right? The statistics say he's not the same explosive dude. But I think one of the concerns that he had with how he was being used in Cleveland was they were not really scheming him into bubbles, right? They weren't really scheming him into those pockets of space. So I think that will be the difference for him here. And the one last thing I want to say about this, and then we're going to...
Well, just to clarify what you just said. So, because this is how I feel.
Yeah.
Those yards after the catch numbers are down because of his situation, not necessarily him as a player.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely the case. Early on in his career, here was his yards after catch per reception: 5.3, 6.2, 5.2. This year in Cleveland, he's at 3.2. He was at 1.9 in 2020.
That's just not using the player up to, that's not using a player to the best of his ability. That's right. It's a way. I don't blame him for being frustrated in that. I don't. Yeah. They weren't letting him be the best player he could be. And I know that sounds cheesy, but you want to, you get the feeling he wants to play for a coach who's going to maximize his skill set. We heard him talk about it on the show last year with Cam Newton. Remember where he said the thing about the Patriots, they are going to put you in a spot to succeed. That to me is the best thing the Patriots have going for them right now. Is Bill Belichick better than, one of the things that makes Bill the GOAT, one of the biggest things that makes Bill the best coach in history is he will find a player who other teams have overlooked and identify one or two traits that player excels at and just put that player in a position to use those one or two traits, right? We're going to use this guy. We're going to have this guy do what he does best. We're going to cover up the warts in his game. Nobody is better at that than Bill Belichick. And that, to me, seems like what Odell Beckham wants more than anything else right now as a coach who's going to let him play the way he wants to play and let him, use what he's best at. And that might be his yards after the catch ability right now. They weren't letting him use that in Cleveland. If he comes here, they're going to use him as a run after the catch receiver. They're going to use him in that way. And I think, that's what he's looking for. If you want to talk about, well, why would Odell Beckham sign with the Patriots? That's it right there. That's the crux of the point. That is what you circle, you highlight it, whatever you want. If he comes here, that's why.
Yeah, I agree. And, when you watch that special with Cam Newton and you sort of look at some of the other players, it might not have worked out the best for Cam last year, but the fact that the Patriots were willing to adapt their scheme around Cam and try to help him succeed with some of the quarterback run elements and the read option plays and the design QB runs on the goal line and padding his rushing stats and things like that. Those are things that I think Beckham took notice in. And you also just look at some of the other guys. And one of the things that I've heard from people that I've talked to on Beckham is that he wants to be coached hard. Like I think that he looks at Ben McAdoo with the Giants, Kevin Stefanski with Cleveland over the last couple of years, and says that those guys really were not pushing me to be my best self. And one of the things that when I heard that, what stood out to me was, remember in Randy Moss's Hall of Fame induction speech, he credited Belichick with kind of pushing him to be that next level, right? To be that next kind of cerebral player. And I think that those are the types of things that Belichick gets out of guys. And lastly here, just from a role perspective, if Odell comes here, I really do think that he's going to play more Z than he's going to play X, because this Patriots offense has outside of 07 and 08 and 09 with Moss, and that's probably the one exception, has never really ran out of the X, right? The X role has never really been the target's role. That's never really been the engine or the straw that stirs the drink of the offense. The Z receiver role that's adapted from Welker or Troy Brown, really, Deion Branch, Welker to Edelman to now Jacoby Myers, that is the most important role in this entire offense. I think they're going to look at it and see that he can upgrade that role, and you still leave Nelson Aguilar on the outside to run the wind sprints and try to take the top off the defense, and you open all that space up on the crossers and the in breakers and the yards after catch plays and the scheme little design type of plays that they use with the Z. And that's for Beckham, right? Because I think if you put him on the outside in the X, I think that's almost wasting him in a lot of ways.
So I would just, and I think they're going to move him around if they get him, but I would just push back on that, because you say outside of 7, 8, and 9, they haven't done it. Well, they haven't had a receiver like this outside of 7, 8, and 9, right?
Yeah.
Those years are honestly, again, we're going to go back to historical context. Those years are the best context we have to evaluate what this would look like.
It's that, and it's Brandon Cooks, who was mostly an X. Yeah,
that was the other one I was going to say. And they didn't have Edelman that year. Yeah. They obviously don't have Edelman this year, or an Edelman guy. I know Myers is supposed to be in that role, but he's not there yet.
Yeah.
And Brandon Cooks was targeted 114 times that season. Caught 65 passes for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. So those are the two best receivers they've had under Belichick in terms of non-pure slot guys, are Moss and Cooks. Beckham's probably somewhere in between there. He's obviously not Moss, but he's better than Cooks. I think we need it, like, if they get Beckham, we need to go back and look at that 2017 offense, because I think that is, and remember, that was a year too. Rob Gronkowski went off that year. That was one of Gronk's best seasons, 65 catches, 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
So I think, Gronk, obviously Hunter Henry's not Gronk, but I think that 2017 team personnel-wise is as close as possible to what this is going to look like if they get Beckham. I think that's the context, and I think you look at Beckham in terms of what Cooks did, because Cooks is another guy, elite, like great downfield threat, but remember, they used him after the catch a good amount. Let me see if I have his yards after the catch here. I don't.
What they did a lot with Cooks was, even though he played in the X, he was playing from a condensed split, so he was closer in tight to the formation. It gave him more field to work with. So he was running a lot of deep overs. He was running a lot of corner routes. He was running a lot of blaze outs where he's going to fake the inside and then break on the out. Things that Beckham could certainly do. I think that Beckham's a little bit quicker than Cooks was, but maybe not as fast in a straight line as Brandon Cooks. So a little bit different there. But I think it's interesting though, because I feel like, to me, they need to put Beckham in the high volume role, right? If he comes here, he should be the high volume guy. He should. But
I'm telling you right now, based on those numbers, I'm just pulling them up again here. I closed them. That in historical context, when their offense is built that way, 114 targets for Brandon Cooks in 2017. You can't tell me that's not a high volume role.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah,
that's.
but I think they tweaked the X role because Nelson Aguilar is not playing the same X role that Brandon Cooks was.
No,
They're
I
not
agree with
trying
you,
to
but
feed him, right?
I'm saying instead of making Odell Beckham the Z in the current offense,
Yeah,
you go back, and it's tough to do this midseason, I guess, but and maybe you have, there's a happy medium here, but you go back towards what you did in 2017, and you have Odell Beckham in that modified X that Brandon Cooks ran, and
Sure.
that's also to go back to what you were talking about with Alabama, Devontae Smith, right?
Right.
When Mac was with those guys, they were condensed a good amount in Alabama too, so you could marry some of that in, but. I would call it, and maybe we're splitting hairs here.
No,
I would call it more of a modified X than a true Z.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to say about Beckham, then I think we can move on. Two things that I both just want to debunk right off the bat. First of all, I have zero concerns whatsoever about his attitude in the locker room. None whatsoever, because I think that Beckham, in a lot of ways, I think is very misunderstood. He is a guy that is a diva superstar wide receiver. All of them want the football, from Devontae Adams to Odell Beckham Jr. to Tyreek Hill. You start playing games with Tyreek Hill, and he gets on a month or two span where he's averaging 4 targets per game. And let's see how happy he is about it, right? I mean, all these guys are sort of the same way. And I just don't think the Patriots are going to let it get to that point, because I really do feel like they will feature him and they will use him a ton. And I think that they have enough of a leadership core that they will not allow Odell Beckham to sort of do what he did in Cleveland or with the Giants towards the end there. The other thing is I think he would be perfectly fine picking up this system, and I think that they'd be able to get him to figure it out more than fine. I think one of the bigger things that I see with this Patriots offense is that even though it is a little bit difficult for some guys, for guys that have elite talent, it's really never that hard. Like if you're Antonio Brown, if you're Josh Gordon, if you're Brandon Cooks, if you're Moss, if you're Welker, like these guys all picked it up, right? They all picked it up. So I really am not too concerned about any of that.
No, and in regards to locker room stuff, I think they can get 8 games out of him. I wouldn't sign him long term, right? Remember during the trade deadline, I said I wouldn't trade for him on that 3-year deal. I stand by that, but you know, when he's trying to raise his value in free agency, get his reputation back, can he buy in for 8 games plus the playoffs? Yeah, I think they can get that out of him, and then you part ways with him in the spring. You go one way, he goes the other. Let him go sign a big money deal wherever at 30 years old, but I'll take him for 8 games. I think he could be good for 8 games. I do. So I'm not too worried about it either. I think they'll have him under control.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I wouldn't sign him to a 5-year extension, right? But
I wouldn't even sign him beyond this year. I
think they might have to.
All I want
from a money standpoint, that to make the cap hits work.
Well, then you use that. What is it?
A void year.
Void year, yeah.
Yeah. I guess you could technically do a void year or voided structure in order to get the cap hits spread out, because next year, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves because he hasn't even agreed to sign here yet. But we could also have a conversation.
We're not doing another show until Tuesday, though. So this way, it's if he does sign, we have it all taken care of.
You could also have a conversation about possibly moving on from Nelson Aguilar at the end of the year, right? If Beckham comes here,
you could do that either way, but yeah.
If Beckham comes here and he's Beckham, right, then you might be able to get out of Nelson Aguilar's second year, and that would save you some money there too if you have Beckham signed for multiple seasons to spread out the caps and stuff like that. All right, let's talk about this Panthers-Patriots game, though, and actually discuss some guys that are actually on the Patriots roster and not players that we're hoping to be on the Patriots roster here in a couple of days. I want to start with the defense. I asked Steve Belichick today, Alex, I'm sure you heard it. He completely shut me down when I asked him about the zone coverage game plans that they've been deploying. But whether Steve agrees with me or not, they played a lot of zone coverage again against Carolina. I don't know if this is going to be the permanent thing for them moving forward forever, right? This definitely could be something that they do game plan, scheme, wrinkle, whatever you want to talk about moving forward. But again, they come out against Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers, and they're basically 70+% zone. And they were effective in it, and it worked. Now, there are some things that I saw late in that game that might concern you if they stick with this formula of playing a lot of cover 3 and cover 2, especially on first and second down. But it worked again, Alex, and it seems like this group is starting to come together again.
Game plan defense. I don't remember who it was after the game. It might have been J.C. Jackson. Somebody was asked about, playing the zone defense when they're traditionally a man team. And the answer was just doing what we got to do to win.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? I was getting after, I forget what coach, but one of these math nerd coaches last week about how they don't adjust. They don't adjust. They do their thing.
Right.
And they're like offensive coordinator Marcus Gilday from Blue Mountain State, if anybody gets that reference. My system will work. It's the system. You can put anybody in it. The system.
Right.
At a certain, it's Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's. At a certain point, you're going to run into somebody who can stop your system. And being able to kind of adjust and maybe do things you're not super comfortable with, like that's what separates great teams from good teams, is the teams that can be multidimensional. So seeing them have this success in zone, I think, is huge. I think it tells you what they're doing is sustainable, right? Everybody talked about, well, it's the Jets. And then people tried to like deride the Chargers offense for some reason, which isn't fair. And as for the Panthers, yeah, Sam Darnold sucks. It's like beating up a little kid, but
Right.
they have good receivers who they covered. They have Christian McCaffrey, who's excellent, who they limited. So it's real. It's sustainable what they're doing. It's very encouraging to see.
Yeah. So I think watching back the tape, I was expecting to see a lot of pressure on the quarterback and Sam Darnold missing reads down the field. But I was actually pleasantly surprised. The coverage was great all day. I mean, they played great coverage for 4 quarters.
I mean, there was pressure on the quarterback and him missing reads too, but yes.
Yeah, there was pressure on the quarterback for sure. The point being is that in these zones, they've done a really, really good job of staying on their assignments, staying on their match calls, not busting these zone coverages. It's so easy in zone to get one guy out of place and bust the coverage and have a huge play happen, right? I mean, as much as in man you can break down as well. The concern about playing zone is everybody being on a string back there, right? And having the whole thing connect all the time. And the Patriots have done a really nice job of doing that. And they have some really versatile pieces, especially to play the low middle hook zones in cover 3. Guys like Miles Bryant, Kyle Duggar had a few really good plays in low zone coverage against crossers and stuff like that from the backside. Just having these players that can be versatile and play these multiple roles and give you some athleticism and some flexibility in those shallow zones has really gone a long way for them. And I was extremely impressed because as bad as Sam Darnold is, and he's bad, don't get me wrong, Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore are good wide receivers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Those guys can play. And the Patriots went out there and they hung tough with those players for 4 quarters and really made it very, very difficult. There were not a lot of huge open lanes. There were not a lot of huge open windows down the field to throw the football. And you see this strategy paying off, I would say, mostly in the fact that the Patriots just aren't giving up any big plays in the passing game, right? Everything that's a big play is like what we saw in Christian McCaffrey underneath the defense and then running the ball, right? After the catch, I mean. That was where some of the big plays happened. And I think looking at forward and wondering if this is sustainable, I think it's 110% sustainable to take away the big plays, right? I think they can play this zone coverage on the back end, and we'll talk about the pass rush in a second, especially if they get this type of pass rush, and they can take away big plays. The one concern that you have, especially on 1st and 2nd down, is late in that game, Darnold finally started to check the ball down a little bit against the zones, and they got Hubbard free and they got McCaffrey free on Tavai and Hightower. So those are the two. That's the matchup that you're a little bit concerned about if they stay in zone, especially on 1st and 2nd down, is opponents leaking that running back out of the backfield into Hightower zone or Bentley zone or whatever the case may be, and then having them shred you like that. But is that on the flip side? It's definitely a less sustainable offense than hitting big plays down the field is, right? Like it's definitely less sustainable to get 30 yards after the catch every single time your running back touches the ball. So the Patriots can rally better the ball and tackle better in space. Then I think that there are opportunities to have this zone coverage work out for them. And we're going to, like I said, I want to talk about the pass rush was phenomenal. And that's definitely a big part of being able to play zone.
Right. Just real quick on the zone, though, I think that's where complementary football comes in, because the best way to defeat those checkdowns is, take teams out of situations where they're worth it. And we've seen it a little bit, right? There was that drive late in the Chargers game. I think they ended up coming away with the field goal, but yeah, they moved the ball like 70 yards, but they took like 8 minutes off the clock and came away with 3 points in a 2-score game. So
Right.
that, is where, all right, you give them the check down. There was another example that drive late in the game. It ultimately ended with an interception, but it was the same idea where even if the Panthers had scored, they took too much time off the clock to realistically get back in the game. So
Yeah.
as long as the offense can keep putting points on the board, and as long as the offense keeps getting better, it's complementary football. This is what this is a core. It may be the core of what Bill Belichick believes in when it comes to game management. If you can get those leads, if you can play from ahead, those checkdowns are harder to justify for the offense. They're less willing to take them. So that to me is kind of how that plays out. It's as long as the offense continues to go punch for punch, which they've done here the last couple of weeks, that kind of defense is okay to play.
And it's also very difficult for a quarterback. And I had put some of the quarterbacks that they might potentially go up against in this category, like a Justin Herbert, like a Josh Allen. It's difficult for those guys to take the check down every single time.
Right. It gets frustrating.
It's very, you have to be very, very patient against.
Baker Mayfield this week is a perfect example of that.
He's not a very patient guy either. So you have these zone structures in the back end. They do a nice job of cycling through 3-match and cover 2 structures. It confuses the quarterback a little bit, post high, too high, different looks after the snap, and you're able to spin the dial there. You're able to protect some of the guys that you have back there, right? You're not asking Jalen Mills to take DJ Moore for 4 quarters or Miles Bryant to take a good slot receiver for 4 quarters in man-to-man. You're able to kind of mask it a little bit more in those coverages while still matching vertical routes in certain structures as well. So a really effective strategy for the Patriots in a lot of ways. A lot of it, though, feeds into the pass rush, right? Like the pass rush was so good against Carolina, who was completely overwhelmed by Matt Judon and Barmore and the guys. Even Hightower had a pretty decent game in the pass rush too. Dedrick Wise had a couple hurries. So you're not going to pressure the quarterback 50% of the time every week like they did against Darnold last week. But that was as good of a pass rush game from the Patriots that I've seen them have in a long, long time. They only had 1 sack, but they were in the backfield on every single play, and they hurried Darnold into numerous mistakes, batted passes, interceptions, the whole gamut of it. It was extremely impressive. And if you're going to play zone and you want to commit your numbers to the coverage and keep 7 in coverage, then you got to be able to get home with 4. And the Patriots have ranked 6th in the league so far this year in pressure rate in 4-man coverages, 4-man rushes, excuse me. So they're getting to the quarterback with 4. And that's definitely something that's going to help these zones as well.
Yeah. And it's just, a lot of people talk about the loss of Gilmore, right? And I feel like they don't associate in the improvements to the pass rush. And they didn't, they lost Gilmore. They didn't add any, any corners. Well, they added Matthew Judon and Christian Barmore. And that's the flip side,
Yeah.
When they had Gilmore, those years they had Gilmore, they didn't have the best pass rush. It was good some years. It was never great. It was never like this. And that was the trade-off. It was, you might not get to the quarterback, but you have corners who can run with the receivers for 4 or 5 seconds and will give the pass rush time. Well, now it's the opposite. You don't have a Gilmore who's going to run with the receiver for the entire play, but the quarterback also has much less time to throw because you have a better pass rush. So it's just, it's a flippant philosophy, and you see it happen sometimes. You see teams do this. It can be brought on by coaching change. It can be, just dictated based on personnel like this one is. And I don't hate it. It's work. You have to have elite pass rushers to make it work. But Matt Judon is 2nd in the league in sacks right now. He's a certified defensive player of the year candidate halfway through the season. I'll call him an elite pass rusher. I don't have any problem with that. Where would you put him in the AFC? Is he
right now?
Is he a top 3 pass rusher in the AFC? I know Garrett and Watt are ahead of him.
Yeah, so now he's 2nd in sacks and he's 3rd in quarterback pressures overall. So it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to argue that he's not at least top 5, right? I'm sure there's some guys that would be in that mix just off of reputation. You also have to factor in Aaron Donald, who's obviously a different position.
Well, that's why I said AFC.
Right. So I don't know. It's as terms of pure edge rushers, he's right up there. And I think one of the most unique things about Judon to me And when Gilmore won Defensive Player of the Year, I think that this was a lot to do with him. As great as he was individually, the confidence and the leadership that he gave to the rest of the defense. Now, he's not the rah-rah guy that Judon is, but you feel people on this Patriots defense feeding off of Matt Judon's energy, right? They just it's infectious in the locker room, it's infectious on the football field and the practice field, and this guy has completely come in here and really change the entire attitude of this defense. And I think they're playing with a lot more just energy, flying to the football more, more on their game in terms of their assignments and their matchups. And you just see so much coming to fruition because Matt Judon, and this is like an intangible thing, right? Just his leadership and his confidence and his bravado and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really a testament to him, and not to give him credit for Christian Barmore's emergence, because that's all Christian Barmore, but Barmore has been fantastic too. And he's somebody that has really taken me by surprise in some ways. I knew he was a great pass rusher. I thought he was going to be a disruptive player for them on third down. The amount that he is playing as early as he's playing is taking me by surprise. I thought he was going to be pigeonholed into that Adam Butler role, early career Adam Butler, where maybe he's 35% of the playing time. He's way above that. He's good against the run. He's good against the pass as a pass rusher, has two gapping ability. He has the ability to shoot gaps in the run game. This guy is really blossoming Barmore into a total package defensive lineman right before our eyes. I mean, this looks like an absolute steal to get this guy in the second round. If you redrafted it right now, he's a top 20 pick.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's just been unbelievable, and he's only going to get better. That's the thing. You watch Sunday night game this week?
Yeah,
I'm going somewhere with this. You watch Sunday night game, the first half?
Yeah, I think. Where are you going with it?
So, what Jeffrey Simmons did in that game?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. Like,
yeah,
I couldn't help watch Jeffrey Simmons and think, man, give Barmore another year or two. And I think that was one of the best performances of Jeffrey Simmons' career. I think Barmore could be better. Yeah. But you look at specifically what Simmons did in that game, and I don't think it's unrealistic to expect Barmore to have that kind of impact on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah, and the fact that he can play multiple techniques is really impressive too, right? He actually got a pressure in this game as a 5 technique outside shade of the tackle, right? Then he can also bump inside and play anywhere between really, I've seen them use him from 1 to 5, right? All across the entire defensive line, and probably a couple of snaps at 0 technique too, right over the center. So I'd say 0 to 5. So the fact that he can play all those different spots, he can rush the passer from all those different spots, stop the run from all those different spots. I mean, this guy has really come into his own, and now you have this combination of Judon and Barmore as kind of your primary pass rushers, if you will, and teams are going to start to adjust, right? Teams are going to start to throw more protection their way. But luckily, the Patriots do have some secondary, and I don't mean defensive backs, just secondary pass rushers, right? Guys like Uche, guys like Van Noy and Hightower, and all that can go in there and also win some one-on-ones. Dietrich Wise won some one-on-ones in this game too. So there's a lot of guys that can definitely affect this pass rush. Chase Winovich hopefully might come back here shortly. He's getting closer to a return. So this pass rush has really woken up over the last couple of weeks in particular, but it looks like a really good group, and that will definitely help out the pass coverage, obviously. All right, let's move over to the offense side of the ball. I want to talk about Mac and just his performance over the last 2 weeks, because I think a lot of I've written that he's been slumping a little bit. Now, some of it you do have to tip your cap to the opponents that he's playing. The Panthers and the Chargers have 2 of the best pass defenses in the NFL, 2 of the best pass rushes in the NFL as well. So that's tough. But now he's going to go up against Cleveland, who also has a very good pass defense and a pass rush. So in my mind, I thought the Charger game, although his accuracy was down, his completion rate was down, he managed the game, right? And when they needed him to step up late in the game and go on a drive, he led a drive. This game, he had only 18 passes. He was a sidecar. right? He was a supporting cast member, and I have no problem whatsoever with them because they're a game plan team through and through in all three phases. And if they decide the best way to beat this team is to run the ball 40 times and only have Mac Jones pass it 18 times, and that's what they should do. But if he's only going to have that small of a sample, he can't turn it over twice. Right, you can't turn the ball over. That's the only caveat. I have no problem whatsoever of them dropping him back only 20 times and only maximizing 3 or 4 plays on downfield throws. But if he's going to be a game manager, if he's going to be a sidecar, he's got to take care of the football.
Yeah, this game is kind of what we thought we were going to see right when they drafted Mac Jones and talking throughout the offseason about everybody's going to have to pick him up, yada, yada, yada. You know, the defense holds Carolina to just 6 points on 2 short fields off those turnovers. That was big. You know, it's 2 weeks in a row. He has been great. Certainly worth keeping an eye on. We know about the rookie wall and all of that. But like you said, it's a game plan thing. It's a game plan thing, and they've just been able to win without him. Now, this week will be interesting because are they going to have running backs? Right? We don't know how much are they going to be able to run the ball, regardless of how much they want to.
Right.
How much are they going to be able to do it? So that factors in. He's facing another tough pass rush. It feels like it's the 3rd week in a row, right, that he's facing the toughest pass rush of his career now in the Browns and Myles Garrett. So a lot's going to be asked of him. We move on to another week.
Yeah, the Browns right now, surprisingly, are actually 19th in DVOA against the pass. They're much better.
That's what I was just trying to find here. That's why I cut myself off. But yeah, it's a good week to throw the ball. It's a good week to throw the ball. They are.
They're great pass rush, but they're other than Denzel Ward. I'm sure the numbers in the metrics would say that their coverage is a little bit vulnerable. Other than Ward, you know, you don't want to go after Ward, but everybody else seems like they can be had a little bit.
So this is actually interesting. So remember with the Cowboys, it was weird because they allowed a ton of passing yards, but they also had a ton of interceptions.
Yeah.
The Browns are actually the opposite. They're 9th in the league in passing yards against, but they're 22nd in interceptions. They've allowed the 5th most passing touchdowns. So they don't allow a lot of yards through the air, but they don't create a ton of turnovers, and they are susceptible in the red zone. So that could be very interesting.
Yeah. If you can block their front, which is a lot easier said than done, then I think you can throw the football on this team. And the one thing that really stood out, I would say, look, the Gilmore pick, I'm not going to sit here and blast Mac for that play because it's a bad play. You move on, right? I mean, there's really nothing else to say about it. It was not a good read. It was not a good decision to throw the ball once Myers got bumped off the route, and that's that. The one that I really look at and say the ball needs to come out faster here is the strip sack because Brian Burns doesn't get to him. I looked this up. Next Gen Stats said that Brian Burns took 3.6 seconds to sack Mac Jones on that strip sack. If that's the case, assuming that's accurate, that's a lot of time, right? 3.6 seconds is a pretty good amount of time in the NFL in the pocket to make a decision with the ball. And that was one of the few times that I've seen Mac lock onto a read. He was looking at Jacoby Myers the entire way, and Myers was working on Stephon Gilmore. He had an in cut and was trying to cut into the middle of the field. There was no robber help. It was a man-free coverage, and it took Jacoby a long time to get out of the route. Oh, it took him too long, right? He was too slow to break on the route. He was trying to throw a bunch of fakes on Gilmore to get rid of Gilmore, and took too long. And by the time Mac decided, okay, I'm not going to go there, he got hit by Brian Burns. And if you look at the play, right in front of Mac is Brandon Bolden on a little angle route for an easy completion. If he just progresses to that faster, and most of the time, Mac is good at that, right? He's good at recognizing the downfield read isn't there. Let's get to the check down. He's usually pretty good there. But on that particular play, as much as we can lament and talk and discuss about the protection breakdown between Hunter Henry and Isaiah Wynn, the quarterback can make that obsolete by getting rid of the ball a little bit faster there. So that's the one nitpick that I'd have of Mac on Sunday that I thought was a little bit concerning was that he was staring down the reads a little bit more than what I've seen him do in the past and not progressing all the way. Now, he did get to Brandon Bolden on the wheel route, right? So that's definitely one thing, that one play where he did get past that, right, and did move on from that. But if I had to look at something that stood out that was like, let's hope that this doesn't become a habit, it was the fact that he was trying to wait for the big play to develop down the field instead of just taking the easy yards that were right in front of him. I want to talk about the running backs. First of all, they're all hurt. That's one thing, right? Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson both in concussion protocol, but they before they got concussed had something crazy like 90% of the total yards were to backs, right, in the passing game and on the ground. So what was just your overall feeling on Bolden's performance? Seems like I kind of chalked up the Jets thing to just being the Jets, right? But now he's done it against another defense in Carolina, and Ramondre looked pretty good as well.
Yeah, Bolden looks really good, and
Yeah,
we're going to really find out this week, right? Because even if they bring somebody in, that guy's got 3 days in the system. So we're going to really see what Bolden can do. But yeah, I thought he looked good. He looks much better as a pass protector, which is big. As for Stevenson, I don't know about you, Evan, that screen, the 41-yard screen.
Yeah.
He hit a gear there pulling away that I hadn't seen from him. And I mentioned that on Twitter, and some people brought up the run against Washington. I mean, he kind of got through when he was gone against Washington.
Yeah.
But that top gear he hit against Carolina, where he's still weaving in and out of guys and moving as fast as he is. I mean, I hadn't seen that at Oklahoma. And this isn't bashing him, by the way. This is a player getting better. This is excellent. This is what you want to see. I hadn't seen that gear from him. And to know it's there, that brings his potential to a whole nother level.
Yeah, the wheel route by Bolden was real nice.
That too, yeah. That might be, is that Mac Jones' best route right now?
He's really good at throwing those touch throws outside the numbers.
I mean, it's been since camp.
Especially if if it's a wheel or like a slot fade where he has the bucket to throw it into, right? Where you give him a little bit of cushion on the sideline, not necessarily just like on a straight go down the boundary, but when you give him that sort of angle to kind of just drop it in there, a really, really good touch thrower in that respect. Bolden went right by Shaq Thompson, like right by him. And Shaq Thompson's a pretty fast player. He's an athletic linebacker, and Bolden went right by him. I thought early on in this game, Belichick actually talked about this on Monday. They had a tough time getting hat on a hat in the run game. The Panthers were really using Jeremy Chin essentially as like a fourth linebacker in the box. They had 8 guys in there a lot of the time, and the Patriots just weren't getting blocker on defender, right? Hat on hat, and they weren't able to do it. Then I thought McDaniels really did a nice job of opening it up a little bit in the run game with those toss plays, right? The toss plays made them respect the corner a little bit more and respect the outside, and that seemed to open up the inside runs a little bit more as well. But Stevenson on the 41-yarder, just a great recognition, and that formation that they've been using, the go-go, right, with the 2 running backs in the shotgun next to Mac, but kind of one in front of the other instead of flanking him like you'd normally see out of that. It's really difficult, and I think what happened on that play is the Panthers were in man coverage, but the Patriots had both backs in the backfield, and they didn't know who had who, right? They didn't know who had Ramondre and who had Bolden, and that was a really difficult sort of formation for a lot of defenses to react to and figure out how we're going to cover both running backs coming out of the backfield. So a nice formation wrinkle that McDaniels has kind of put into the system, and both backs can kind of affect it coming out of the backfield. So it's a cool formation. It's kind of like a college, and the guy at Hawaii, I'm blanking on his name, is the one that started using it at the college level, and the Patriots actually started using it last year with Cam Newton. But they mostly had Jakob Johnson as like a lead blocker in that, and they still do that. But now they have both running backs in the go-go that can both catch the ball, that can both run the ball, and Bolden can block a little bit as a lead blocker. So really effective formation for them. And like I said, I thought McDaniels really did a nice job of adapting the play calling in the run game, because the Panthers had the inside runs on clamps early on in this game. And the Patriots ended up only running the ball, running for like 3.8 yards per carry or something. It wasn't a really overly efficient rushing game. But they were able to get the yardage total up there and run the ball when they needed to. So all good things there.
You want to up? Did we lose Evan?
No, I'm here. I thought you had something else to say.
Well, do you want a little breaking news?
Sure.
Little breaking news.
Not Odell size breaking news.
It is Odell related.
Oh, okay.
But Jordan Schultz from a number of things.
Yeah.
He had the report earlier that Odell Beckham had prioritized the Packers as his number 1 destination. So this is from him a minute ago. Update on the Odell Beckham Jr. situation. OBJ's team has also, so he quoted his tweet about the Packers. So the Packers are included here, has also had conversations with the Chiefs, Saints, and Patriots, sources say. So we now have Packers, Saints, Chiefs, Patriots. Those feel like they should be the top 4. I can see Vegas as kind of a sleeper. Maybe if you want to make it a top 5, round it out. But so that's, you've had that. Not to like take away from your report, but I'm just saying now we've heard it from Schultz. We've heard it from you. Tom Curran essentially hinted at it. Mike Giardi essentially hinted at it. It really does. The Patriots are talking to him. It does sound like if he wants New England, the door's open. The contract's there. There's a spot on the roster for him. The ball's in his court. But it does feel like the invitation has at least informally been extended to him.
So the question, I've been told basically at this point that people, and I think just with Giardi and Curran also kind of reporting this along, more or less saying it, like you said, right? People in the building in New England are all in on Odell coming here, right? I think the concern that you would have is when you're going up against Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers in the suite, like, is Mac Jones enough, right? Is Mac Jones shown Odell enough and his camp enough to say that we would still go to New England over playing with Mahomes or Wilson or Rodgers? That's I think the bigger problem here for the Patriots.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is, and I see it in the chat, please, Bill, right?
Right.
You know, if he doesn't sign here, this isn't about the Patriots didn't want him. I don't want to see people in the chat on Thursday bitching, why didn't they sign Odell? They need Odell. They want him. They are trying to sign him. They can't force him to come here. He has to ultimately choose the Patriots. I'm not saying the Patriots are a bad option. This isn't me saying, because I know this was a narrative. Oh, Brady left and players don't want to play here and players hate Bill. Like, that's not what this is. Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are 2 top 5 quarterbacks. Mac Jones has been great. He's not there yet. There's really attractive options on the table for Beckham. I don't think the Patriots are out of it. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes here. But I just think at this point, the ball is in his court. I truly believe the offer's been extended. They think he would help the team. They want him. They are trying to get him. Now it's, well, let's see if they do. I don't think this is a matter of them not wanting him. I don't think it's a matter of them thinking he's not good, that they can get by without him. They want to add him. It really feels like that. So I don't want to see that. I don't want to see, oh, they should have signed Odell. They know they should sign Odell. It seems pretty clear at this point. They know they should sign Odell. He just has to agree to come here. That to me is it's on him at this point. It's up to him.
Yeah. So the last thing I had on my list of things actually relates to Odell. So we can go into it at some point in time. And look, I love Jacoby Myers' story, right? I love Jacoby Myers' story, but at some point in time, we might need to have a tough conversation about Jacoby Myers because, well, first of all, this was not a good game for him against Carolina, right? I mean, he has the bobble play on 3rd down where Mac throws him past the sticks and he bobbles it and gets tackled a yard short. I mentioned on the fumble, the strip sack by Brian Burns, that it was Myers that couldn't get open on the route, that was taking too long, forced Mac to hold the ball in the pocket. The problem that I see with him is not that he's not an NFL receiver. He's an NFL receiver, right? And he can be an NFL receiver. The problem that I see with him is that he doesn't have enough speed into his routes, right? His stems are slow and he doesn't get into the top of the route fast enough. And it takes a while for him to get through the route, right? And he's quick at the top of it, but it takes a while for him to get to that phase of the route. And it forces the quarterback to hold the ball a little bit longer than you probably would want. And at that point, I think it's fair to start to question or think about, is Jacoby Myers really the best that they can do as the primary Z receiver, right? He's definitely an NFL receiver. He definitely belongs in this offense and on this team, but is he the long-term number 1, number 2 type of option in this offense, or do they really need to look to upgrade that? And that's part of the reason why I think they should be so all in on Odell, is because I think he would really give them a different element than what Myers can offer them.
Yeah, but again, like I said, I'm not making Odell a part of the long-term plans. I agree with
Fair
you
enough.
in that I think Myers is a guy they can upgrade, but this
Yeah.
is just we got 8 games left. We're trying to make a playoff push. Let's add a good player. Like even if Myers was balling out, I'd still say they should add him. Like this is not a long-term thing. We're still going to talk about wide receiver. We should still be talking about wide receiver as one of the biggest needs. And as much as I love Odell for 8 games, he's not going to sign a 1-year deal in the offseason. He's going to be looking for that multi-year deal, get his last big contract. I'm not signing a 30-year-old receiver with a history of knee problems and butting heads with quarterbacks to a long-term contract. So I think it's 2 separate conversations. I like Odell for 8 games. He's obviously an upgrade over Jacoby Myers, but he's not the long-term answer to that problem.
Fair enough. I just think that we all get caught up and love Jacoby Myers because he's someone that has done it all the right way, right? The undrafted guy that worked his butt off to get on the team and carve out a role. He was really, really productive last year. He's an NFL receiver. All those things are true. But at some point in time, you need somebody that's a little bit more explosive, I think, in that role.
Well,
and somebody that's a little faster and better after the catch.
Right. I'd put it this way. I think, like you said, he's an NFL receiver. He can contribute, but he can't be it. And Kendrick Bourne's coming on right now, and he's kind of helping. But right now, it kind of feels like Jacoby Myers is it. They're not getting a ton from Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah.
Nikhil, I don't know what the deal is with Nikhil. When I saw he's getting like a 40% usage rate, my jaw dropped. It does not feel like that. So, they again, I like Jacoby, but you got to put pieces around him. He can't be the guy. He can be a guy. Certainly. And like you said, I mean, he's an NFL receiver, and I think he gives you some unique things with some of the trick plays you can run with him that make the offense really difficult to defend.
Yeah.
But you need to upgrade around him, specifically Aguilar. Like they need to be better in that spot. And Beckham again. Beckham does it for 8 games.
Sprints. He's running wind sprints.
Right.
And you didn't look that role that serves a purpose, right? Clearing out space, taking coverage with you down the field, offering some sort of outside one-on-one type of threat serves a purpose. But in this game, he got a lot of Dante Jackson, and he was blanketed pretty much the entire game by Jackson, who's a good corner. But at the same time, you didn't pay a guy $13 million to run wind sprints, right? And I guess you can go out and go about it away and say, okay, well, if it's Damiere Byrd out there instead of Nelson Aguilar, then is he really getting Dante Jackson, and is he really getting the safety over the top? And like maybe Aguilar's, I guess, reputation or status or whatever, it adds some more gravity, right? Some more gravity to the coverage. But at the same time, $13 million is a lot of money for a guy to just run in a straight line every single game, right?
Well, I mean, you want some context here?
Yeah, sure.
Nelson Aguilar, based on what he's done so far this season, 22, 335, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
16-game average for that. 40 catches, 600 yards. 40 catches, 600 yards. Damiere Byrd last year.
Yeah.
47 catches, 600 yards. He's actually, I'm rounding a bit. His 16-game pace in terms of catches and yards is below what Byrd did last year. It's about the same, but it's slightly below. He's ahead of pace on touchdowns, but you're basically getting Damiere Byrd level production from a guy you're paying, 7-8 times what you paid Byrd.
Right. So the question is, you'd have to really.
And again, I don't want to keep dumping on Damiere Byrd. I actually really like Damiere Byrd. I thought for a second he caught that game-winning touchdown pass last night. I jumped out of my chair. I legitimately like Damiere Byrd as a football player and a person, but this is just the point of reference.
Right. So the question is Aguilar's status as a $13 million receiver that had a good year last year with the Raiders and all this kind of stuff, his reputation, is that good enough? Is that gravity? Is that defense is respecting his speed over the top? Is that worth a little bit more money? It's definitely worth a little bit more money, but I think we can definitely have a long talk about it being worth $13 million, right? I mean, there's a middle ground there, right? Where he's worth more than Damiere Byrd because he's drawing more coverage than Damiere Byrd, and he's drawing the number one guy and all that kind of stuff, but he's certainly not worth 10 times more than Damiere Byrd is at the moment. So We'll see what happens with this Patriots receiving core. We'll see what happens if Odell Beckham Jr. makes a decision in the next couple of days. Alex and I will have you covered. We'll probably try to go live immediately if Odell Beckham does sign with the Patriots here on Patriots Press Pass. Alex, we hope it will be you, but if you have 98.5 obligations, then we'll be live anyways, right? But we're going to try to do it with Alex. Go ahead.
I already have, if he does sign, I already wrote it. So I just got to copy and paste and fill in a couple of blanks. And yeah, it's a little look behind the scenes of how we do this. But yeah, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Hit that bell icon. You'll get notified as soon as we go live. So you know, you'll jump right in. You'll see our initial reactions. Follow us on Twitter as well. These stream on our Twitter accounts. And they're right here. And Evans is over there. And if turn the notifications on for that too, because like you said, we'll try to go right away, but the only way you can get it right from the beginning is if you're getting that push notification on your phone. So that's how you do that.
110%. So like I said, we will go live almost instantaneously if the Patriots sign Odell Beckham.
It depends if I'm wearing a shirt when they sign him or not. It might take a minute or two.
I hope you're wearing pants when they sign him or not, Alex.
Well, I'll be wearing them when I find out. The question is, will they still be on when we start the show? But we only film from here up, so it won't matter.
you catch a break there. If not, either way, we will be on Friday previewing this matchup against the Cleveland Browns, Alex. We should, it's all the fun games to talk about Odell, right? It's very exciting. Right. But the Browns are a very, very good football team. That's
going to be a fun game.
Absolutely blew the doors off of the Cincinnati Bengals last week. Great pass rush. Myles Garrett might be one of the best players in football, just taking the position out of it. He's like maybe the best player in the entire NFL right now. So he's an absolute force. Their offense can run the football. We'll see what running backs the Patriots have available and what running backs the Browns have available in this game. But it doesn't really seem to matter for Cleveland. Dearness Johnson ran for over 100 yards behind this offensive line.
AAF legend.
So great scheme on the Cleveland Browns run game. Great O-line. Doesn't really matter if it's Hunt or Chubb or Dearness. That's a dangerous running game. The Patriots run defense, good, not great right now. So I'm really interested to see when we know sitting in the press box and the fans, 65,000 fans in the stands, and the Browns and the Patriots know the Browns are running the football. Can the Patriots stop it? Right? When everybody in the world knows the back is getting the football, can New England put the beef on the field and get the job done against the run? We will find out on Sunday against Cleveland, and we'll see if Mac Jones can take down a pretty good Browns defense as well. So Alex and I was a preview Browns Patriots on Friday afternoon. We will keep you updated all week long on the Odell Beckham Jr. sweepstakes as well. But until then, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching, everybody.